So, use cases. AI in digital fabrication, virtual reality, augmented reality, and digital twins, which is super interesting. Okay, so this first example is AI generated design from concept to fabrication. This is a client I had online that I never met in person, that I created an entire catalog for, with, in the end, would be over 100 different design options or products for their customer base, which were these metal bathtubs that he was fabricating in Asia. And so and I was here in Portugal. I think he was in Canada. So he was able to tell me what he wanted, use text-based AI, ChatGPT in this case, to sort out the ideas, to really refine the concept, to brainstorm. Then I used an AI image generator, in this case Midjourney, to generate some potential ideas that I sent to him, and he told me what he liked, what he didn't like, and then I refined my prompts. I actually went back to ChatGPT to refine my prompts to generate images. Once I got to that point, I knew that this wasn't realistic. Thankfully, I have a ton of experience in interior design and fabrication, so I know this plumbing isn't going to work. I mean, all of this exposed plumbing, we would see so many pipes, it would be dangerous, it wouldn't look good, and why is there a couch here? All sorts of stuff like that. And then also knowing how he was going to get it fabricated was also super important in the design of the tub itself, right? So I took it into Photoshop. At the time, it was Photoshop Beta. It's new AI features, but now you can find this on all Adobe products, where I used it to fix those little moments that weren't realistic. I took out the couch, I added some built-in vanities because that's what the client wanted, altered the shape to accommodate for fabrication, as well as how the base connects with the architecture. Then I used Blender. I used some AI tools to make it as well, and then exported it into AutoCAD to create the fabrication drawings, the technical drawings, and then it was fabricated. They created a mold and the metal around, and they could do this really quickly. And we could do several different designs and different materials, of course. So yeah, so this is one example of how I could create a ton of designs. I mean, very quickly. In the matter of weeks, it was fabricated, where before this would have taken maybe, well, more than months. It could have taken a year, right, to create a 300-page catalog of different designs. So 3D manufacturing, like I said, you can fabricate very quickly, rapid manufacturing. Another example, creating so many designs so quickly, like with Nike, coming up with these designs specific to each shoe, specific to an athlete. It's a video. Yeah, so they designed several different shoes, each custom to a specific athlete, their needs. They used AI to generate them, used 3D printers to fabricate them. They're very cool. They were made in weeks, as opposed to months or a year. I don't know if you've ever done, especially shoes, you have to make a ton of iterations to get it right. But with using AI technology like image capturing, where you can just scan your foot, and using it to generate the ideas, a ton of them super quickly, so you can get feedback really quick as well. It's super powerful. Okay. And then this example is from MIT. It is Splint. That you can customize. So imagine you just broke your finger. You could scan in your hand, and within minutes you would have your custom splint and be able to 3D print it immediately. This is a cool project. I think I have a link. Yeah. Of course, there's an ad. Okay. So the point is, you can just get a glimpse of it. I think the design is really cool too. It emulates crocheting. So it kind of connects the old craft and the future. And it's nice and flexible that you can just slide your hand in. So very cool. Okay. So this is a project that I just did for a festival where I also gave workshops on AI and VR. So I digitally fabricated tower viewer, like you would see a point of view. And this festival was around regenerative future. I wanted to make sure that all of the materials used to fabricate the tower were actually pieces of cork that is local to Portugal, that would have been thrown away. So it was completely non-wasteful. And I was able to fabricate it using actually CNC for the head. There's also 3D printing for the hardware. And I use laser etching there's the municipal, the city's logo on it, since this was supported by the city of Lisboa. But I was able to come up with this idea and fabricate it within 48 hours. I did this project just a couple of days before the actual festival. It was very quick and it worked. And I integrated the concepts of virtual reality headsets, like these DIY ones that are made of cardboard that we'll talk more about later. So the idea here is that you could kind of integrate virtual reality into our world. So when they would look through the viewer, it was at a point of view. So you would see this beautiful landscape or horizon of Lisbon. And then when you would look through it, you would see future possibilities of what Lisboa or Lisbon could look like. Made dozens of them, even in the workshop itself, dreaming up what future Lisboa could look like. So these are more examples of AI generated worlds. These on the sides were mine that I created for Lisbon. But these worlds you can go totally 360 in, and you can generate them within seconds, max a minute. But of course, you could get much more detailed and edit and customize and alter design as you wish. Okay, and then we have AI generated video for the purpose of architecture, or like communicating your concept to the client. You can use video instead of just a photo or rendering to kind of portray the vibe, the aesthetic, the shape. This just came out as a test for Sora, which is from OpenAI. We'll talk more about tomorrow during practice how you can turn AI generated videos into AI generated models. So if you can create it in a video, you can create a 3D world, actually. So it's just another workflow of creating these AI generated designs or worlds. I think this is super important. Like, even if you're not in architecture or urban planning or anything like that, or even interior design, if you're just designing products, objects, I think it's super important to also have the world, the environment there with it. I think context is everything. I didn't mention when I did study architecture, the idea was the first year was dedicated to environmental studies. So all in one building, we had architecture, interior architecture, product design, urban planning, and furniture. So the idea was it's all the same foundation of design principles, and it's all relative. So how we design a chair is related to how we design architecture, which is how we design a city, which is how I design my toothbrush. It is all related, and I think we can design better if we take that more into consideration. And VR can help us do that. So here I have an example of, I actually used this for projects. Archeo, I used it in the metaverse using the Oculus headset, and I could just throw in my model from SketchUp, AutoCAD, Revit. I mean, you can pretty much all 3D software at this point. You can import into this app, and you can edit with your hands. It's super cool, and you can be immersive. You can be inside, you can be at like the human level, or you can make yourself huge. You can invite other designers, engineers, clients. You can walk around together, edit as you're touring the space. Imagine you're with the client and they say, actually, I would really like a window here. The building hasn't been built yet or anything. Or maybe the foundation was just built and you guys are all there with a headset. Or they don't need to be in a headset either. They can just be on their computer or phone and see what you're seeing. So a lot of options. Very cool. Mixing real and digital, because you can have your totally digital model in this app. And then you can create these like peek throughs, like you see with creating the window. If you create a window in your design, you will see what's behind that space. So imagine you're designing physically in the space, and you're adding a window, for example. You will see what's beyond, or you can add a 360 world to it. So you could generate with AI a 360 world. Put it in the world, so as you're designing, you see the other side of where your client is located. So we can design with mixed reality, but we can also construct this way. This is an interesting user case where they built the structure using augmented reality, where it gave them guides for where to put every single brick. So imagine you go to a construction site and you don't even need to really tell your crew what to do. They just put on the headset and it tells them 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's get a little peek what that would look like. So we have the mixed reality. Yeah, so it's a nice guide, like a template. Another example is drones. I think drones are very cool. Of course, with all technology, it can be very cool and it can also be very scary. But we're focused on the world we want to design and create. And in this one, drones can really help us out and prevent a lot of back-breaking labor, like with this flying autonomous fruit picking robot. Super cool. Goes, flies around, picks the fruits, can calculate if it's ripe or ready, and would lead the others. This can also be used, a drone could also be used in several ways with agriculture, where it could prevent a lot of water use that is unnecessary, because it can evaluate what land actually needs watering and water accordingly without excess. Or we have building cleaning drones. This is a really hardcore one. So it can do a lot of stuff that's really dangerous for humans, difficult for humans. We can have an easier life, and if we use these tools for good. And of course, I believe a lot of your backgrounds are in architecture. You've probably seen drones for construction sites, surveying the land, recording to see how it's doing, things like, or for LiDAR scanning, which I'll talk more about later. Parametric design, you're probably familiar with as well. I'm not going to get super deep into this. This is a whole other master's degree you can get. But just this concept of using AI, using computers to generate architecture under certain parameters. So I can say, the land is this big. It needs to have the sun moving from here. The sun is moving from here to here. The wind is moving from here to here. I need these pathways to get to the employees need to get to their office efficiently. There needs to be a kitchen. I can put all of these different parameters in, and even those from stakeholders or the community. Let's say this citizens have input that they want to incorporate. This can all be a place to collect that data and experiment with it. And we can use extended reality in urban planning as well. On the right here, this is a cool example of designing 15-minute cities. It ensures that there is a park, there is there's a hospital, there's transportation, education, a library, restaurants and shops. There's all of these things within 15 minutes of walking, which can help ensure accessibility, and that we don't need to necessarily always use cars and things like that. So super important and a bit complicated. But why this is interesting is you also then don't always have to design from top down. You can design immersively from an eye level. You can, all of these buildings need to be here and the street is here and all of this information, but I can also make myself human scale and experience what it's like to walk down the street and this building's so tall. And maybe that will inspire the designer to curve an edge or something to make it more softer for the human experience. I didn't mean to click on that, but this is a pretty interesting site called Digital Blue Phone. So you can see all of the different statistics and things you can explore, traffic, scenarios, vegetation, CO2, sea rise levels, things like that. And there's a ton of other information for spatial analytics, using AI to calculate costs and things like that. Okay. We can also use extended reality to gather more data. We'll talk about more why data is super important for AI, but just to say, you could use virtual reality for eye tracking, for example. Like, all of these technologies could be used for good or evil. For example, we're talking about theories. So, imagine a retail store collecting this data of eye tracking so that they can position products to be bought. And that's kind of interesting because data is so important for that. They might design the retail space, encourage you to stay longer, even if you don't purchase, because there is a value in them collecting your data. Kind of like when you go to a website. Actually, when you're going on the website, you're sharing a lot of data. You're sharing where your mouse goes, where your focus is. There's eye tracking, through these web browsers as well. And where do you stay longer? This is super common with social media apps. It's all just collecting your data, using it to sell you things or selling it to other companies so they can sell you things or political ideologies. But nonetheless, you can use it for good as well. Imagine an interior designer. This is something I've always wanted to. So imagine an interior designer putting the VR headset on their client and having the client just spend some time with it, how they normally would, or I guess how they normally would if they had a VR headset on. But the VR headset will get smaller and more or augmented reality. I mean, there's already glasses, regular looking glasses for this. But yeah, you could collect so much information about how the client moves through the space, where they like to be. Do they spend a lot of time near the window, or do they tend to be more, in a book or something? You could track like how they spend their time at home or in the space and use that data to design a space that's more conducive to their lifestyle and maybe healthier. And then here we have something similar. Yes, so a heat map tracking where they're looking and spending time, much like we do on web browsers. So virtual reality is kind of, we're bringing the digital world into the physical world and vice versa. This is really interesting for interior design, where you could actively design your space and in a way fabricate, right? Have the product shipped to you. So There you go. So imagine someone or a designer could actively go around the space and just say what they want and then accrue a bill at the end to implement it. Okay. Or they can swipe through different furniture layouts for their space, which is really cool. This is all AI research and VR research being done for Shopify. And so, yeah, a much more immersive way of shopping and designing for space. It cuts out a ton of time in between. I know as an interior designer in the past, I would spend so much time creating the presentation boards and, all of the presentations that I would have to do to communicate these ideas. I could just be there with the client or without, recording, streaming my view with the client, and we could design and talk through this space in real time and be done by the end of the phone call. So digital twins of objects. So we hear a lot about digital twins of people. There are even political leaders now that are digital twins. They've created a digital twin of themselves that the AI digital twin presents itself, and the person is behind in an office, hidden, protected. So, but that's kind of actually a very basic level of a digital twin. A full-fledged digital twin is when it actually has data live streaming to it. And so imagine in architecture, you have your 3D model and it has stats and the HVAC, the heating, cooling system, what's the temperature, how's the plumbing doing, is everything working? So that's a great digital twin. The first example of a digital twin was this guy, Apollo 13 with NASA. It is actually, because it was a digital twin, is the reason the astronauts survived. I don't know if you watched Apollo 13, you're probably familiar with it. But that was because someone on Earth could go to the digital twin, the 3D model, and see what was going on in one part of the ship, the spacecraft, that the astronauts could have never accessed themselves. And from Earth, they could troubleshoot it, and it ended up saving their lives. So digital twins, super interesting. You could create a digital twin of a piece of land, so you could monitor climate change, sea levels, things like that. You could have a digital twin of your cup. Wow, can't see it. Of your cup, and it could tell what the temperature is at the moment, and maybe you can, from your phone, control its temperature. Things like that. So it's super important, because imagine like a wing of an airplane. It would be incredibly impossible to, just before a flight, there's a red light, you don't want to take off, but you don't want to open up an entire wing and try to figure out what's going on. You want to go to the digital twin and see how the stats are, or what's going on. Are there any issues? And you can solve it there. And then wherever there is a physical issue that you would need to get to, you would know exactly where you would need to go without having to open up the entire thing. And also it can analyze that data and predict based off that data what will happen. Like I was saying, you could use monitoring a piece of land to see if where the sea levels are, things like that. There's actually a good example here. I didn't mean to click on that. I forget that I put these examples, but this is a great digital twin. Let's see. So they have a digital twin of the entire facility, so they can monitor a bunch of things like safety, productivity, efficiency, if there's any issues. They have a really great example here. So they can map out the main traffic ways. And by collecting this data and monitoring it, you can also see where maybe you can get from A to B more efficiently or quicker. So imagine there's a hazard, there's an issue here. The digital twin will have that information, warn people. so they don't go there, or someone goes there immediately and controls it. They can have these robots that are functioning at the same time. There can be an AI that informs the team what's happening. So this could be used in a million ways. This is an interesting use case. This island, Tuvalu, is looking at very serious climate change, and they're at risk of this island completely going under water. And there are many concerns, of course. So they created a digital twin of the entire island so that they could monitor this information. They used the LiDAR scanner and drones to scan in the entire island and monitor it. But there's also the concern of losing their culture, right? They want to preserve the culture digitally as a solution. This is super interesting because so many people are concerned about technology kind of taking us away from our culture, our heritage. But this is a really impressive example of how we can actually preserve our culture and heritage. They also, because if it's all flooded, how will they show their nationality? So they actually created NFTs for each citizen. And these countries have recognized it as well, so that they will have citizen rights globally. So let's show you some examples of how they're preserving their culture, and even with preserving the language, so that if anyone wanted to learn about it, like we are now, or future generations can learn about their heritage and their culture and the stories of the elders. It's a really beautiful project.